This fight straight up should be the main event, the co-main event, all of the poster. It's like the part behind Blue Eyes where you're feeling kind of sad because everything's sad and then all of a sudden the skies open up. It gets real. We have Charles Jourdain representing Belay, Quebec, Canada. This is your guy. You also have Gatineau, Quebec, Canada's own Marc-Andre Barriault on this card. And you have the man himself, Tanner Boser as well. Canada represent. Maybe it'll be a three-peat. Ontario let us down last weekend because, listen, TJ Laramie and Jesse Ronson weren't able to get the wins. However, when I look at this fight, Matt, for Charles Jourdain, the guy is a striking dynamo. He's also 3-3 with a draw. See, I almost said no contest, but a draw in the UFC. And for Lando Vannata, he's 4-5 with 2 draws in the UFC. But that's not the whole story. Like, for Jourdain, has a wild fight where he knocks out the hometown guy in Busan, Korea against Doo Ho Choi. You know, the guy that's now in the UFC Hall of Fame, the fight wing, against Cub Swanson. Well, Charles Jourdain went over that way. And he beat him, and he looked amazing. But we've had ups, we've had downs, we have highs, we have lows. We have draws against Joshua Culibao. And then we have what happened in Charles Jourdain's last fight, where he took on Andre Ewell, kicked him in the leg, and at the end of that fight, he didn't finish him, but he had an awful crazy finishing sequence of a kick to the body. And for Groovy Lando Vannata, I was surprised he moved down to featherweight in his last fight, to be completely honest with you, because he did, and he was a lifelong guy at lightweight. I know he had a fight at welterweight at one point early in his career, but he took on Mike Grundy at featherweight, and in that fight, he gets the win. It is by split decision. The judges' scorecards, if you will, Craig, I'm glad you asked for them. Chris Lee scored the contest, 29-28, Vannata. Marcos Rosales scored the fight, 30-27, Vannata. Patrick Patlan scored the fight, 30-27, Mike Grundy. I'm going to throw the picture up there on the screen. That's how many major organizational fights Patrick Patlan's been able to hand in a judge's decision. Not a many of them, and Strikeforce included in the very few select ones that are there. So it was a big head scratcher to me that Mike Grundy was able to win like that. Like, you know, maybe 29-28, 30-27 Vannata, possibly, but 30-27 Grundy was a huge head scratcher, considering his takedowns weren't all that effective, and his striking was mostly moot.
I gotta be honest, the right guy won, so I really don't care that much. I understand the judge made a really, really bad decision, but the right guy ended up winning, so I'm not gonna really get caught up on that one judge's bad decision.
Now, my big question is, though, Matt, again, for Lando Vannata, I brought it up, 4-5 with 2 draws in the UFC. Obviously, we remember him for the crazy knockout against John McDessie, the wild fight that he had against Tony Ferguson. But for Lando Vannata, it's kind of been a mixed bag lately. I know the 5-on-in, you look at it, 3 years ago, fights Marcos Mariano. We're going to talk about Marcos Mariano on this card. He also fought Claudio Poyas. Those are his 2 losses when he was in the UFC. Came in at 6-4, left as 6-6, Anderson Silva's protege. He beats Mark Chikasi. He loses to Mark Chikasi, beats Yancy Medeiros, loses to Bobby Green, and then beats Mike Grundy. For Lando Vannata, it's kind of weird. 30 years old. We kind of haven't seen giant leaps and bounds in his progression. He's very much a wrestler at heart, but he loves to strike.
Exactly. I think it's the opposite way, though. I really do think he's a striker who now has become a wrestler, because Lando Vannata fights in a much more safe way than he ever did when he first came into the UFC.
D1 experience at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga.
Well, my point is he is an MMA striker who chooses to wrestle, though, in the majority of his fights. But I would say in his last 5 fights, he has gone back to that wrestling a lot more.
For one semester. So that you can't really argue. Well, he did wrestle D1 for his semester. But yeah, I agree with you in that one. Like sure. with Lando Vannata, I agree with it in the way that he came in with the wild striking. He started to rely on the wrestling. Sometimes defensively, his wrestling's not all that great, though. Like, that's one of those things. And sometimes you can get caught up kind of doing the same thing over and over and over again in some of his fights.
Because he's been in a lot of crazy fights. And when you've eaten the amount of damage that Lando Vannata has in what is it, 16 UFC or 16 MMA fights? Like, he hasn't been in that many fights, and he's eaten an absurd amount of damage throughout his career. And I do think that as a result of all that damage that he has taken earlier on in his career, he is fighting in a more safe manner. Like, yes, that Tony Ferguson fight was crazy. So was the David Tamor fight, too, at UFC 209. That was a fight of the night that not a lot of people remember, but that was a back-and-forth brawl. And Vannata has found himself in a lot of those fight-of-the-night style fights. And I do agree with what you said about him moving down to 145 was a little questionable. I know physically he looked really good on the scale. He looked jacked up. I didn't think that was his best performance, though, by any means against Mike Grundy. And yes, you can get into the scorecards about how they were a little weird. Lando Vannata just didn't really look like the active version of himself that we kind of known and loved before that. Because, like, losing a decision to Bobby Green at lightweight doesn't really mean it's the end of the road for you. And the fact that he saw that as like, okay, I need to make this massive change in my career to now go down in weight. We're going to learn a lot more about Vannata in this matchup against Charles Jourdain, because against Grundy you have another guy who's a wrestler, so he will counter that part of your game, at least for the most part. And on the feet, Vannata is a much cleaner striker than Mike Grundy. But in this fight, I think Jourdain is the crisper striker on the outside, and I think Jourdain is more willing to get into a firefight. Now, that could be a good thing, that could be a bad thing. Early on in Lando's career, I think that'd be a bad thing for Jourdain. I think Groovy Lando would be able to sort of read his counters, find the holes in his wildness in his game, and crack him with a few really nice shots down the middle. I don't know if this version of Lando can do that to Charles Jourdain, though, because now, instead of Vannata looking for counters to where he can strike on the in-betweens, he's looking to change levels a lot. And against someone like Jourdain, if he gets that first takedown, then maybe that will be the best game plan for him. But if he can't get that first takedown, and if he is expending a lot of his energy going for the takedowns and not really being defensively sound on the feet, Jourdain doesn't really get tired as fights go on, other than that one time that he did. So I do think that Charles Jourdain can pick up a lot as this fight goes on. I think early on, these guys' power will be very similar, but I do think as round 2 and 3 comes on, the leg kicks and body kicks of Jourdain really are going to accumulate on Vannata.
Now I need a can of the blue stuff from the fridge that is off screen to our left as Matt clangs everything that's in there, but realistically, when I look at this fight, for Lando Vannata, used to have a mop of hair, used to have a beard. I don't know if anybody's checked out either of these guys' Instagram's games. For Charles Jourdain, still at Brazilian Top Team Canada. For Lando Vannata, still at Jackson Wink. And none of that has changed. Jourdain hasn't really even spent much time in the States training since he's joined the UFC. And for Groovy Lando, the thing that I've noticed is shaved head. He's rocking a dad goatee, and I'm just wondering if he's just going to hang out, he's going to grab a can of Bud Light, crush it, and open up a can of whoop ass on Charles Jourdain. Like, we'll see what happens. I'm not going to stone cold this one. But when I do focus on this fight, Matt, the weird thing is, with a guy taking a more safe approach to his fights with Lando Vannata, more ramping up his technical boxing, working in some of those takedowns, the thing for Charles Jourdain is, I don't know, I mean, yeah, okay, what does he do great? His boxing, his odd long-range weapons, there's snap at the end of his jab, there's snap at the end of his hooks. When he throws that right hook out there, he does great damage. And his left body kick, it's like Gabriel Benitez. These guys are on the level. Charles Jourdain, when he whips that kick out there, it's wild. Now, he switches stances. The thing you don't like to see, especially for the judges, when guys come at Charles Jourdain, he has great striking defense. Like, it actually is top tier in this division. But the craziest thing is, he shells up. Not a lot gets through, but he does shell up, and a lot of volume can go his way, so you don't necessarily love to see that. His Achilles heel is his takedown defense, though, and that's the most interesting part of this fight, because Charles Jourdain doesn't have the greatest takedown defense. Lando Vannata has pretty good wrestling, but Charles Jourdain is the much superior and crisper striker to Lando Vannata, so that's what makes this one so much fun. So odds for this one, Jourdain open to -120s and -139 on best fight odds. For Vannata, open to +110, +113. We have a look at Tapology. Surprise to us as it is to you. So we're going to have a look at that vote. I'm going to say over under 67.5% for Air Jourdain.
I'll say over.
I'm going to say over, slightly over. 557 total votes, 70% Jourdain, 82% by decision. For the 30% that have Vannata, 85% by decision. So a lot of people seeing this one going to a decision, Matt. What are you saying on this fight?
Jourdain reminds me a lot of a younger Lando Vannata, if we are being completely honest. They both have that weird explosiveness to their game. They have that kind of weird hitch to it where nothing they do looks normal, but it is very effective. The difference, though, is Vannata has changed his fighting style at this stage of his career, and I do think he's going to be a little bit more defensively sound. I think he's going to try to rely a lot more on his jab to close the distance. And I think that's going to play right into the game of Charles Jourdain. I think he's going to be able to counter over top of that jab with his counter right a lot. I think the body kick's going to be open quite a bit too. But I'll throw up the same caveat that I did for when Vicente Luque fought Bilal Muhammad. Because, hey, I said Luque was going to win, but I also said if Bilal Muhammad could take him down one time, he's going to be able to do it more and more. I got very mad at Chael Sonnen, I remember, at question mark kicks. Now, I think this fight could go the same way. I'm going to pick Charles Jourdain, but I would not be surprised if Lando Vannata could out-wrestle him for 3 rounds.
I'm also going to pick Charles Jourdain for the reasons that we both made earlier, but again, if Lando Vannata goes to the well with his takedown, Charles Jourdain's takedown defense is less than stellar. And I know he's got a good move to get back up to his feet, but sometimes he also gets held down. So it's one of those ones where Lando moving down in weight like he has, this will be his second fight at featherweight rather. Long time lightweight, physical advantage, and He's big around the shoulders, and for a guy who can wrestle, to keep you down with that upper body strength, it plays right into that. So I do like the counter right. I like the body kick. I like the leg kicks of Charles Jourdain. For those reasons, I'm taking him, but I absolutely love this fight. I'm going to watch it with pop and popcorn, and maybe Lando Vannata opens up goatee energy whoop ass, and we decide to crack some cans. But I think this is going to be an amazing fight. I know you're excited about this.
100%. These guys have insane highlight reel finishes in the UFC. I don't know how this fight will not be fight of the night at the end of it. This is one that, show your friends who don't know anything about MMA, I'm almost going to guarantee you that they're going to love Charles Jourdain versus Lando Vannata.
Should be a great one. Both of us going with Canada's own, Barriault, Quebec's own, Charles Jourdain to get the win. Absolutely love this fight. Let us know down below in the comments section who you have not only in this one, but the rest of the fights as well. Love to see that activity down there when you get a big time card coming up with the rest of this. Amanda Lemos taking on Jessica Andrade in that main event. So keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say,
let's get into it.